We have launched an unprecedented economic boom, a boom that has rarely been seen before. There's been nothing like it. We are considered far and away the hottest economy anywhere in the world, not even close. More people are working now than at any time in the history of our country. 157 million people at work.
157 million people. Joining me right now, Pennsylvania Senator and a member of the Budget and Finance Committees, Pat Toomey, here in the studio. And Senator, it's good to see you this morning.
Good to see you.
Thanks so much for joining us. I don't think there's any question about the strength of the economy right now. So let's take a look forward and see how this economy stays strong, 3% or plus growth. You've got a couple of things on the agenda here. You've got the USMCA NAFTA 2.0 deal that is supposed to get ratified. A lot of Democrats that I've spoken with say they're not going to vote for it in its current form. You have issues with it as well. And then you've got a China deal that is pending. Tell us where you stand on these trade issues and whether or not that is the secret sauce to keeping things strong in economics.
Well, I think it's really important. I think the biggest cloud on the horizon is the possibility of a deteriorating trade situation, a spiraling trade war. I certainly hope we avoid that. On the new NAFTA agreement, for me, the path forward is not obvious. Speaker Pelosi, we've seen this movie before. We've had 3 times when a Republican president has given Speaker Pelosi free trade agreements. She took them and put them in the bottom drawer of the desk and never did anything with them. So maybe this time is different, but it's not obvious to me that giving Donald Trump a huge victory on domestic policy is one of her priorities. I'm also concerned about the direction she would take it. If you look at NAFTA, clearly, it's a free trade agreement. That is what it accomplished, and it was very, very good for our economy, I think, contrary to what the president views it. The new version changes it relatively modestly, but in ways that diminish trade. I mean, that's clearly what happens in the auto sector. That's clearly what happens with the reduction in the investor-state dispute settlement mechanism. That's clearly would result from the termination that this new agreement contemplates, which is a really bad idea.
Yeah.
So I would like to see some movement in the direction of freer trade in those areas and several others. But on the other side, they want to move it in the other direction. I don't see exactly how that gets resolved.
Is this going to be a constant resist for the next 2 years? I mean,
I don't know. I mean, this is, this ball's really in Speaker Pelosi's court. And as I say, it's hard to imagine that this is a big priority for her. And I'm happy to sit down with the administrator. We work with Bob Lighthizer. He'll be before the Finance Committee today. We'll be discussing this and other issues. So I'm more than willing to try to get to yes on this. But it will take some changes in the implementing legislation. I'm not asking them to reopen the negotiations, but the implementing legislation.
Let me bring in Steve Forbes. He's in New York right now. Steve, go ahead.
Senator, good to see you, and I'm glad you're still a good free trader. But what's going to happen in terms of uncertainty if this new NAFTA does not pass, or does the president try to blow the whole thing up? That kind of uncertainty hurts investment. And a China deal, I think we'll get a China deal in the next few months. But if it looks like it's not going to clear Congress, that's going to create uncertainty as well. Isn't that going to hurt the whole business investment environment, this uncertainty about what's going to happen with these deals?
Well, Steve, good to see you. I think that is very much the risk, right?
That's what you just said. A deteriorating trade situation is the biggest cloud on the horizon.
I think that's the biggest risk that we face. I agree. I think we really ought to try to get an agreement with China. In my view, the real issue with China is not the size of the trade deficit on any given day. The real issue is the theft of intellectual property, coerced technology transfer, cyber attacks. Those are harder to monitor. They're harder to make sure you're correcting. So my hope is that they will focus in on that. They'll have very broad support in Congress if an agreement with China effectively addresses those issues. If the idea is just get the Chinese to buy more soybeans, That's not the problem we have with
China. Exactly what I just said to Secretary Pompeo. 100%.
Right? Yeah,
Go ahead, John.
On the USMCA, I just want to make sure I understand you. It sounds like you're saying you won't vote for it unless you see changes in the implementing legislation.
That is correct. And to Steve's point,
specifically do you want to see changed?
Well, I'll get to that. To Steve's point, I don't believe the president has the legal authority to withdraw from the underlying NAFTA. I think that's abundantly clear. And so if the result is we stay in the current NAFTA, that's actually served us quite well. I know that's not the president's view, but NAFTA has been a free trade agreement that has allowed tremendous increase in trade between our three countries. It's really been terrific. A few of the things that I'd like to see fixed. First of all, I don't think you should have a termination date on a free trade agreement. Putting a deadline out there and saying, oh, well, it's all over then. Yes, there is a mechanism that's contemplated for extending it, but there's no assurance that that would actually happen. So who wants to make a major investment based on a completely uncertain termination date? Investor-state dispute settlement mechanism. We have this in every free trade agreement we have because American companies investing overseas can't always be confident that they're going to get a fair shake in the court in a foreign jurisdiction. And so we have this mutually agreed upon mechanism for adjudicating disputes. It works really well, and they essentially abolish it, certainly with respect to Canada, and in this agreement largely with respect to Mexico as well. A really bad idea in my view.
Really,
I want to ask you about
incredible.
A fiscal issue. Okay. Do we have time?
We got to jump, but we appreciate you joining us, Senator.
Thanks for having me.
I hope you'll come back very soon. These are really important topics, and we need your insights on them.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much, Senator Toomey, joining us there.